The sequins aren't glittering quite as brightly as they used to on Strictly Come Dancing. The flagship BBC light entertainment programme, the cornerstone of its Saturday night output, has been rocked by allegations of bullying, abusive, even threatening behaviour. And thus, centre stage in the spotlight, not the celebrity dancers themselves, but their professional partners' conduct in the rehearsal rooms. No one would criticise competitiveness, just the tactics alleged to have been used in search of that perfect 10 from the judges.
Do you know, the dancers are under a lot of pressure, and it is competitive, it really is. And she trained me hard, so we worked hard. 6, 8, 10-hour days training to do good. And that just shows how competitive it is and how much of a big platform it is.
I'm Niall Paterson, and in this edition of the Sky News Daily, as the BBC's annual report is released, we ask, is Strictly Come Dancing tangoing to the exit? Later on, we'll examine the huge cultural impact of Strictly with TV critic Scott Bryan. But let's start with Sky's arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer, joining us from outside the BBC's new broadcasting house, so apologies for the noise at times. Katie, remind us exactly how this Strictly story first came to light.
Signs that perhaps all was not going to plan emerged really when Amanda Abingdon first quit the show back in October. Back then there was lots of sort of rumours being published in some of the papers that she hadn't been happy with her partner Giovanni Panice, but it's only this year that we've had it announced that actually Giovanni wouldn't be returning to the show.
Can we just be really specific? What is it that Amanda is complaining about?
Well, Amanda, over the weekend, saying that Giovanni Panice was abusive, cruel and bullying in the tactics that he used, in the techniques that he used in the training room. Giovanni, if you're a fan of Strictly, he's always had a reputation as being someone that is in a very intense character, that works his stars hard, but gets very good results out of them. And I mean, he's a former winner of the show in itself, and a huge sort of fan favourite as well. I mean, he's just finished a tour with Anton de Beck, which has been hugely popular. And I think while these allegations have been made, there have been a lot of fans that haven't perhaps really wanted to believe that the claims made against him by Amanda Abingdon may or may not be true. I mean, on his part, he completely refutes the allegations that have been made. From that, it has then spiralled into other claims being made by other former contestants, Zara McDermott being one, which then led on to Graziano Di Palma, who was due to be in the next series in September, named as one of the professional dancers, then being fired by the show because it emerged that actually the production team had recorded video of him kicking his partner from last year, the former reality contestant Zara McDermott.
Sorry, what?
Kicking, and that's not all. I mean, she said he spat on him. It's footage that hasn't been made public, but clearly does exist enough for the BBC to say, no, you're not going to be coming back to the next series.
Sure.
Graziano and his part has completely apologised and says that he realises that he pushed Zara a little bit too far, and he's very sorry for that, and he's returned back to Italy and is, by all accounts, working on a farm now, he said. But yeah, look, these headlines have been really badly damaging for the brand that is Strictly as well, which has just been so popular and sold to 60 countries around the world.
We should make it absolutely clear, whilst two women, Zara McDermott and of course Amanda Abingdon, have been at the heart of this story, it is not simply about female contestants on the show. Matt Baker's name has been mentioned. Steve Backshall, the explorer, has talked about issues surrounding his relationship with his partner, Ola Jordan. A chaperone had to be introduced into their relationship. But also you've been speaking to another former contestant.
I've been speaking to Anthony Agogo, who was a contestant in 2015. He loves the show, he's proud that he's been on it. He honestly said that he would go back on it again if he was asked this year. But he said he can see how its duty of care gets a little bit forgotten about along the way.
You are very aware you're in this intense fishbowl of pressure and emotion, and it's live TV, it's the BBC. You want to represent yourself and your dancing partner. Like, you feel very, you know, you want to just do really, really well. So it's funny because I'm quite a strong-willed person, and even I buckled under that pressure. So I can see why people do get swept away with it.
So let's just be absolutely clear about this. We have allegations over Graziano Di Prima's conduct relating to his partner, Zara McDermott. We have allegations relating to Giovanni Pernice, introduced by Amanda Abingdon, but we also understand that she has spoken to Ranveer Singh, Laura Whitmore. Look, did these celebrities not get into it with their eyes wide open? I mean, you've said already on this podcast that, he had a reputation as being a stern taskmaster. Everyone who watches the show understands that if you want to have any chance of not just winning the thing, but just even making it to Blackpool for the ballroom section, you have to work harder than you've probably ever worked in your professional life.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it is an incredibly hard show to sign up to, and one that when you are offered it is a hard one to turn down, because prime time Saturday night on the BBC, watched by millions. There are very few shows that have that level of attention on them now, like Strictly does. Did they know what they were getting into? I mean, I think perhaps a lot of these contestants felt that they would be a bit more supported than they actually were. And perhaps they weren't aware of the reality of how much of the time is spent just one-on-one with your individual professional dancer as well. I mean, if you're not a professional athlete and not used to that level of training, there's very few scenarios where, say, we would be just in a room one-on-one for 12 hours a day with just that one person. And if you don't really get on with them, if you're not used to that level of physical exertion, then it's a brutal thing to kind of try and wrap your head around.
Sure, but it does feel like the world is a dramatically different place now to where we were, when this show started 20 years ago. And I look at some of the behaviours that have been described by Amanda, by Zara, by others. What I can't understand is why the BBC didn't move with the times then.
Yeah, I think the reason that there is the momentum of this story is continuing is for that very reason. Why has it taken the attention of newspapers, of Zara McDermott herself going on the record to say this happened? Why did it take that for them to now be saying, oh, well, we take duty of care very seriously, we are introducing chaperones into rehearsal rooms? Why was that not raised in the first place during the last season at the very least? I think there are certainly real questions about what is going on behind the scenes and why certainly the production teams either felt they couldn't raise this as an issue or weren't being listened to. It's baffling, quite frankly.
No, I completely agree with you, all of which makes the comments from the Director General, Tim Davie, today all the more interesting. Presumably plenty of questions asked of him as the BBC releases its annual report about what is going on as regards Strictly Come Dancing. So simply put, what on earth is going on as regards Strictly Come Dancing right now?
My heart goes out slightly to the Director General because the timing of the annual report is we have very few opportunities to actually get in front of the Director General and put questions to him. And last year it was the Hugh Edwards scandal that everyone was talking about, so we didn't end up talking about the report quite so much. And this year it's the Strictly scandal. Tim Davie said, no, the lineup is the lineup. He does not expect that there will be any more changes, which in itself kind of says that he must kind of not be expecting any further claims to come forward. Asked whether or not there was any point whether he had considered pulling the show and taking it off air, he said absolutely not. He is satisfied that they've responded to the claims quickly. This investigation's going on. They're looking into what's happened. The report itself, he said, would be coming out soon. He wouldn't go so far as to say that it will be out for the next series of Strictly, but it sounded fairly hopeful that we would have some answers on exactly what this inquiry has been soon. But he said in no way the future of Strictly is sounding in doubt. He said that he is satisfied that they have now enhanced their duty of care protocols, if you like, by adding these extra chaperones into rehearsal rooms at all times. So he feels that they can safely deliver the quality show that they want to deliver.
Katie, thank you. Back in a moment with TV critic Scott Bryan. Stay where you are. Welcome back. Every so often, a TV show becomes part of the national conversation, and so it proved with Strictly. the glamour, the snarky judges, the celebrities who genuinely surprised you when they finally tapped into some previously hidden talent and moved audiences to tears with their routines. Today, it remains part of that national conversation, but for all the wrong reasons. Scott Bryan is a TV critic and cultural commentator. Welcome to the podcast, Scott. But look, first things first, I can see a glitter ball over your shoulder there. So are you a fan?
The glitter ball here, may I say, is like a light fitting that's been attached to my flatmate's study. That's what I'm saying on the record.
Sure.
It is weird. I kind of avoided Strictly for quite a few years. It wasn't really my bag. But then I think it was the pandemic. I just got stuck into it. And I think it's the story, the quote unquote sort of Strictly story of celebrities not realizing that they're actually capable of something that they didn't know that they could really master, dancing. And that kind of building up the story of like them honing in on their skills and getting better is kind of really heartwarming. And I think that's the surprise. It's a show that I don't think even the BBC knew was going to be as big as it is now.
And I suppose that is, to some extent, responsible for the incredulity that some people are experiencing right now, hearing these allegations emerge from inside the training rooms. I mean, to those of us who have watched it on and off over the years, Strictly certainly seems to style itself as all about the glitter, all about the growth of these individuals that are going through what is an arduous process. But I just wonder if that's entirely true.
I think with these allegations, I mean, it really goes to the very heart of the show, and that's why it's so troubling for the programme. And I think it is also at a time in which in British TV, just as someone who looks at this industry, there has been a real swing of interest towards issues around duty of care. And it's an issue that viewers really care about. It's been in the news in regards to reality shows, in regards to daytime programmes. Viewers really do care about whether things are as harmonious as maybe the show likes to highlight. But I think there is a general sense that the BBC should have had a grip on this earlier and better. Last week, the BBC had announced a whole slate of new policies, such as having a chaperone, with all of the pairings during their rehearsals to make sure everything is appropriate. But I think to many viewers, seeing that new policy, they would be thinking, there wasn't a policy like that already?
But as someone who has watched Strictly over the 20 years, it is obvious to me that it has become rather more technical, that it has become rather more serious. I mean, someone showed me the statistics earlier on today. In the first series, there was one perfect score. There was 110. In the last series, there was more than 60. And that in part is due to the casting, the celebrities that they are bringing in, but it is also down to the effort that they are putting in. I mean, simply put, ballroom dancing is bloody hard if you've never done it before.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking to one judge on Strictly, Craig Revel-Horwood for The Guardian last year, who said that when he first heard about this programme 20 years ago, he thought it was an utter shambles of an idea. The idea that you can get celebrities with no training and no experience to be then doing performances on the highest level. I mean, he referred it as car crash television. But now, of course, there are these concerns about what is the limit. Are the celebrities now being put into situations that they're unhappy about? I mean, it's been quite clear from what Tim Davie has been saying today at the annual report that clearly, there have been some cases in the past where a line was breached, and that he's now apologised to any celebrities that have experienced something that they now feel shouldn't have happened.
One of the things that has struck me, and of course the BBC, as always does at times like this, defending itself to the hilt, as indeed they are entitled to. You can challenge the defence if you like, but that is exactly what I'm going to do. I mean, Kate Phillips, the BBC's director of Unscripted, says that when we are made aware of inappropriate behaviour, the BBC will always take that seriously and act. Well, that's nonsense, isn't it?
I think the BBC have always said that they believe that a vast majority of celebrities who have taken part in the programme have had a positive experience. I think it's worth bearing in mind that, we are now, I guess, approaching more than 250 to 300 different celebrities have participated in that show. And I think it's down to the onus about, whether celebrities approach the media or approach the BBC if they have had any concerns.
And let's not forget, this is a hugely successful show. It's had 22 seasons. This is its 20th year on air. I mean, this just isn't something that the BBC will wish to lose.
I think, bizarrely, Strictly over the course of its run has become a big show for many different audiences. And it's a rarity, I think, in the BBC in which it really brings many different audiences together to watch one certain programme at one certain time. I think a challenge is kind of whether the feel-good nature that this show has always been able to have, regardless of the challenges it has faced currently and in the past, whether that will be able to be retained or whether people, when this show returns in a few months' time, will see that as being phony because of all of the allegations and the procedures that the BBC has had to go and talk about now. Will the normal so-called sparkle return to the programme and people just sort of see it as a bit of Saturday night kind of fun in the way that they've always seen it? Or are they going to start looking past that and start being a bit cynical about it? Because, that will in turn, affect one of the BBC's biggest programme, a show that I think the BBC has always expected to run and run and run and run and run, because so far it has managed to survive the rise and fall of so many other talent competitions. It's managed to dominate against every other channel, and it's managed to be at the mainstay of British popular culture and Saturday night culture for 2 decades. That's incredibly rare.
On a linear television channel as well.
On a linear TV channel that has had generally falling audiences. I mean, last year the audiences fell again slightly to 8.8 million, but 8.8 million is still huge in the light of Netflix, Disney, and of course every other TV show that's ever been made that people could be watching.
But to return to your point about there not being the supervision in those training spaces, we now find ourselves again in a situation where the BBC, not being quick to act, not being on the front foot when it comes to the public relations surrounding this issue, finds itself as the story, not Strictly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the BBC is also in a unique position in which, because of the unique way it's funded, it's a licence fee organisation, it will be kind of in the public consciousness more than, let's say, this is a story affecting ITV, Channel 4 or any other rival, because people feel a sense of entitlement and a say in it, and that's a good thing. I mean, I think the BBC has tried to be reacting quicker and sooner and swifter than it has before. But I mean, sometimes you wonder about how long it can dominate for news just because they're not able to respond as swift as you would expect them to. I mean, this has not been the first story we've had about duty of care. This has not been the last story about duty of care. And it's a concern that is affecting millions of people and viewers, because I sort of feel that, a reason why these issues have a particular connection with audiences is I think that they connect stories that they've read in the papers around allegations of workplace bullying and harassment, perhaps to their own workplaces or perhaps to their own lives, and they see the same structures in place. So they would want that, particularly when TV itself is seen to be a form of escapism and something aspirational and something to be entertained by, they would expect, particularly if it's a public service organisation such as the BBC that they pay for there to be the right safeguards, the right duty of care, as they would expect.
Thanks, Scott. But let's head back to Katie Spencer outside the BBC, because, Katie, of course, the Beeb published its annual report today, and there is other news to discuss, namely presenter pay. Hugh Edwards, once the BBC's main newsreader, the host of the biggest live events, including general elections. I mean, he's not worked for the Beeb for quite some time, but he is still getting paid remarkably well.
Yeah, I think that was the one that was a bit of a shock when the salaries were released, because of the fact that he only handed his notice in April. He remains the person on the third highest salary at the BBC, and actually, in fact, had an increase of his wages by £40,000 last year, which it's a little bit jaw-dropping. But again, it's that fact where the BBC has to follow the rules that any employer would have to follow. His wife had said that he was suffering with his mental health, so that was widely known. But yeah, he received full pay up until he handed his notice in April, making him the third highest paid talent at the BBC after Gary Lineker, 1.3 million for Gary, and then Zoe Ball, then Hugh.
But irony upon irony, of course, whilst Mr. Edwards was still drawing his paycheck, the BBC was drawing up plans for yet another round of redundancies.
I understand why we're here talking about Strictly, but this is also the sort of semi-frustrating thing that when reports come out, these are the only times that we have to quiz the Director General. So in a way, these big problems that the BBC is facing get somewhat overshadowed by the sort of other talking points we want to talk about. But yeah, 500 more roles are going to have to go by March 2026, we know. The BBC has been under so much pressure to find ways to cut its costs because it isn't getting any extra money, and also it's got this existential crisis now as well, really, of dealing with how its future funding lies, because we found out in the report today as well the drop in the number of people paying their licence fee has dropped by 500,000 people. So there's so many big issues that will no doubt be keeping Tim Davie awake at the moment. The Strictly one is the one that's making the front pages of the newspaper headlines, but he's got a lot on his plate really to try to address and think about under his reign at the BBC.
Katie, thank you. Tim Davie will hope that the investigation concludes soon so that attention can move back to the tango and away from the torment. Such is the importance of the show that the idea of cancelling it does seem highly unlikely. But no amounts of makeup nor disco lighting can disguise the fact that when the BBC said that they always take allegations of inappropriate behaviour seriously and act upon them, well, that doesn't appear strictly true, does it? That's your lot for this edition of The Daily. We'll see you again soon.